The CEO who could buy anything couldn't buy his answer. When Evelyn Cross, the iron-willed CEO of Meridian Financial, cornered Daniel Reed. At exactly 5:27 p.m., she had one question that had haunted her for months. Why does he keep saying no? No to promotions, no to dinners, no to her. Daniel Reed, the man who could predict market crashes but never stayed past 5:30, who solved million-dollar problems but lived in a modest apartment, who had kind eyes but kept everyone at arm's length, was about to reveal a truth that would shatter everything Evelyn thought she knew about sacrifice, love, and what truly matters when the world stops watching. Stay until the end of this story. Hit like, and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights of Meridian Financial's 42nd floor cast their usual sterile glow across rows of mahogany desks and glass partitions. Outside, the city sprawled beneath a darkening November sky, its million windows beginning to glow like embers. Inside, the hum of ambition never stopped, keyboards clicking, phones ringing, voices rising and falling in the language of profit and loss. Daniel Reed sat at his desk in the southeast corner, his fingers moving across his keyboard with the practiced efficiency of a man who had done this exact thing in this exact way for years. His workspace was immaculate. No photos, no plants, no coffee-stained mugs with inspirational quotes, just 3 monitors displaying cascading columns of numbers, a single notepad with his precise handwriting, and a small analog clock, the kind with actual hands that ticked audibly in the silence. The clock read 5:23 p.m. Daniel's eyes flicked to it, then back to his screen. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. 4 minutes. He saved his work with quick keystrokes, closed each window methodically, and reached for the blazer draped over his chair. "Leaving already, Reed?" Marcus Chen called from 2 desks over, his tone playful but edged with something sharper. "Big Friday night plans?" Daniel slipped his arms into the blazer without looking up. "Same as always, Marcus." "That's what worries us," Marcus shot back with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You're making the rest of us look bad. Some of us actually have lives to avoid." A few scattered chuckles rippled through the nearby desks. Daniel offered a thin smile, polite, practiced, and utterly empty of real warmth. "Have a good weekend," he said simply, slinging his messenger bag over his shoulder. 5:25 p.m. He moved toward the elevator with the same unhurried pace he always did, neither rushing nor dawdling. His shoes made soft sounds against the polished floor. Around him, the office was in that strange twilight state. Half the desks already abandoned, the other half occupied by people who'd be there until midnight, either by choice or desperation. Daniel pressed the elevator button and waited, his expression neutral, his posture perfect. To anyone watching, he looked like a man with nothing on his mind beyond dinner and television. The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. "Daniel." The voice stopped him mid-step. Not loud, not harsh, but absolute. He turned slowly. Evelyn Cross stood 15 feet away, hands clasped loosely in front of her, head tilted slightly as if she were examining a particularly interesting piece of art. She wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her dark hair pulled back in a style that was both severe and elegant. Her eyes, sharp, intelligent, relentlessly focused, fixed on him with an intensity that had made seasoned executives stumble over their presentations. "Miss Cross," Daniel said evenly, "I didn't see you there." "I noticed." She took 3 measured steps toward him. "Do you have a moment?" Daniel's eyes flicked to the clock on the wall behind her. 5:26 p.m. "I'm just heading out," he said. "Perhaps we could speak Monday morning. I can come in early." "This won't take long." Evelyn's tone wasn't unkind, but it left no room for negotiation. "Walk with me?" It wasn't really a question. Daniel's fingers tightened on his bag strap, but his face remained carefully composed. "Of course." Evelyn turned and began walking toward her corner office, her heels clicking against the marble with metronomic precision. Daniel fell into step beside her, acutely aware of the eyes tracking them, subtle glances from colleagues who'd learned to read the office's power dynamics like weather patterns. They passed through the main floor, where junior analysts hunched over spreadsheets like monks over illuminated manuscripts. They passed the glass-walled conference rooms, empty now except for forgotten coffee cups and whiteboard ghosts of meetings past. They passed the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a view of the city Daniel never stopped to admire. Evelyn's office occupied the northwest corner, a space of clean lines and expensive minimalism. She gestured to one of the two chairs facing her desk. "Please, sit." "Miss Cross, I really do need to." "Sit, Daniel." He sat. Evelyn moved behind her desk but didn't sit herself. Instead, she stood at the window, hands clasped behind her back, silhouette sharp against the dying light. "How long have you worked for Meridian Financial?" she asked. 6 years, Daniel replied. "Almost 7. 6 years, 9 months, and," she glanced at her watch, 13 days. "Your employee file is remarkably thorough." She turned to face him. "In that time, you've never been late. Not once. You've never called in sick. You've never missed a deadline. Your performance reviews read like love letters. 3 different department heads have tried to poach you. You've been offered 4 promotions, 2 lateral moves with significant pay increases, and 1 opportunity to join our London office at nearly double your current salary." Daniel said nothing. "You've declined them all," Evelyn continued. "Every single one. Do you know what your colleagues call you?" "I can imagine several options." A ghost of a smile touched Evelyn's lips. "The monk. Because you arrive at 8:30, work with laser focus, and leave at 5:30, never deviating, never socializing, never joining the happy hours or the golf outings or the networking dinners that everyone else treats as mandatory career maintenance." "I wasn't aware my punctuality was a problem," Daniel said carefully. "It's not a problem. It's a mystery." Evelyn moved around her desk, perching on its edge, close enough now that Daniel could smell her perfume, something subtle and expensive. "And I don't like mysteries in my organization, Daniel. They tend to indicate either hidden ambition or hidden weakness, and I can't figure out which category you fall into." "Perhaps neither." "Everyone falls into a category." She crossed her arms. 3 weeks ago, I invited you to the executive dinner at Aurelio's. You declined. Last month, I personally requested your presence at the Thornhill Foundation Gala. You declined. In August, I suggested we discuss your career trajectory over dinner. You declined. Her eyes narrowed. "I don't make those invitations lightly, Daniel. Do you know how many people in this building would kill for 5 minutes of my undivided attention outside this office?" "I'm sure the number is considerable." "Then help me understand." Evelyn leaned forward slightly. "Why do you keep saying no?" The clock on her wall ticked in the silence. 5:29 p.m. Daniel's jaw worked for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but steady. "With respect, Miss Cross, my personal time is exactly that. Personal. You're a single man with no social media presence, no emergency contacts beyond a lawyer, and apparently no interest in advancing a career you're exceptionally good at. That's not personal, Daniel, that's peculiar. I do my job well. You do your job brilliantly, which is why I'm trying to understand what's holding you back." She paused. "Or who?" Something flickered across Daniel's face, so brief that if Evelyn hadn't been watching so closely, she would have missed it. But she was watching. She was always watching. "There's someone, isn't there?" she pressed. "Someone you need to be with. Someone who comes before everything else." 5:30 p.m. Daniel stood abruptly. "Ms. Cross, I appreciate your interest in my career, but I really must go." "Answer the question." "No." The word hung in the air between them, simple, absolute, without apology. Evelyn's eyebrows rose. "No?" "No, I won't answer. My personal life is not your concern, and with all due respect, you have no right to demand an explanation for how I spend my time outside these walls." Daniel's voice remained level, but something had hardened in it. "I arrive on time. I do exceptional work. I meet every expectation placed on me within my job description. What I do at 5:31 p.m. is none of your business." For a long moment, Evelyn simply stared at him. Around them, the office had grown quiet, that particular silence of a building emptying itself of human ambition, leaving only the hum of servers and climate control. "You're right," she said finally. "I apologize. That was overstepping." Daniel blinked, clearly not having expected concession. However, Evelyn continued, standing and moving back behind her desk, I want you to know that the offer for dinner, professional or otherwise, remains open. I don't extend opportunities twice, Daniel, but for you, I'm making an exception. Think about it over the weekend. There's nothing to think about. Daniel moved toward the door. Have a good evening, Ms. Cross. Daniel. He paused, hand on the door frame, but didn't turn. Whoever they are, Evelyn said softly, they're very lucky to have someone so devoted. Daniel's shoulders tensed. For a heartbeat, Evelyn thought he might turn around, might say something, might give her the answer she was searching for. Instead, he walked out. Evelyn stood alone in her office, watching through the glass as Daniel strode toward the elevators with the same measured pace, pressed the button, waited exactly 7 seconds, and disappeared behind the closing doors. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she rarely used. Michael, it's Evelyn Cross. I need you to look into someone for me, quietly. The subway car rattled through the darkness beneath the city, its fluorescent lights flickering with each lurch and sway. Daniel sat in the corner seat, messenger bag on his lap, staring at nothing in particular. Around him, the Friday evening crowd was a mix of exhausted workers and eager 20-somethings heading toward weekend freedom. A group of young women laughed over shared earbuds. A man in paint-stained coveralls dozed against the window. 2 teenagers argued about a video game with the passionate intensity only adolescents could muster. Daniel heard none of it. His mind replayed the conversation with Evelyn Cross, her questions, her observations, her unnervingly accurate assessment of his life. She was right, of course, about all of it: the declined promotions, the refusal to socialize, the rigid schedule that allowed for no deviation. But she was also wrong. She thought there was something holding him back. In truth, there was someone holding him together. The train emerged from underground, and suddenly the city spread out below in a carpet of lights. Daniel's reflection appeared in the window, a man of 38 who looked 45, with premature silver at his temples and lines around his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and carefully contained grief. His phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Drinks at Hannigan's. Last chance to prove you're human. Daniel deleted it without responding. 23 minutes later, he exited at Riverside Station and walked 4 blocks through a neighborhood that was neither prosperous nor destitute, just tired. The buildings here were old brick and faded concrete, built in an era when function mattered more than form. Bare trees lined the sidewalks, their branches dark against the purple sky. He stopped in front of a 4-story building with a small sign, Riverside Long-Term Care Facility. Taking a deep breath, Daniel pushed through the doors. The lobby was warm and smelled of industrial cleaner with undertones of institutional food. The walls were painted a soft blue that some designer had probably decided was calming. Inspirational posters hung at intervals, sunrises, mountains, generic phrases about hope and strength. "Evening, Daniel," the security guard called from his desk. George was 62, with kind eyes and a grandfatherly manner. "Right on time, as always." "Evening, George." "She had a good day today," George offered. "Nurse Patterson said she seemed peaceful." Daniel's throat tightened. "Thank you." He signed the visitor log, a formality George didn't actually require, but Daniel performed anyway, and moved toward the elevators. The building was quiet at this hour, visiting time winding down, the night shift beginning their routines. 3rd floor, room 314. Daniel paused outside the door, his hand on the handle. This moment, the transition from the world outside to the world within, never got easier. Every day, he had to prepare himself. Every day, he had to remember how to breathe. He pushed the door open. The room was small, but private. A concession Daniel had fought hard for and paid dearly to maintain. Soft evening light filtered through gauzy curtains. A single bed occupied the center of the space, surrounded by the quiet machinery of modern medicine. Monitors that beeped softly. Tubes that carried fluids. Rails that prevented falls that would never happen. And in the bed, tiny against the white sheets, lay Lily. She was 11 years old and weighed 73 pounds. Her dark hair, so much like her mother's, was pulled back in a simple braid that one of the nurses had done that morning. Her face was peaceful, features delicate and perfect, as if she were simply sleeping, as if at any moment her eyes would flutter open and she would smile and ask what was for dinner. But her eyes didn't open. They hadn't opened in 3 years, 2 months, and 17 days. Daniel set his bag down and pulled the chair close to her bedside, the same chair he'd sat in every evening for 1,173 consecutive days. He took her hand, careful of the IV line, and held it gently in both of his. "Hi, sweetheart," he said softly. "I'm here." The monitors beeped their steady rhythm. The ventilator whispered its mechanical breath. Somewhere down the hall, a television murmured. "Had an interesting day at work," Daniel continued, his thumb tracing small circles on the back of Lily's hand. "My boss, Ms. Cross, I've mentioned her before. She cornered me in her office. Wanted to know why I keep turning down her invitations." He smiled faintly. "I didn't tell her, of course. How could I explain? How could I make someone like her understand that there's nothing, no promotion, no salary, no amount of prestige that could matter more than being right here, right now, with you?" Lily's chest rose and fell with the rhythm of the ventilator. Her hand lay motionless in his. Daniel reached into his bag and pulled out a worn paperback. The Secret Garden, Lily's favorite. They'd read it together 7 times before the accident. They'd started their 8th read-through on the day she'd gone to school and never come home the same. He opened to the bookmarked page and began to read, his voice steady and gentle, filling the small room with words about hidden places and growing things, and the magic that happens when you tend to something with love and patience. Outside, the city moved on. Lights blazed, traffic flowed, people laughed and argued and lived their lives in the endless rush of existence. In room 314, time stood still. Daniel read until visiting hours ended at 8, then carefully marked his place and closed the book. He stood, leaned over, and pressed a kiss to Lily's forehead. "I love you, little flower," he whispered. "I'll see you tomorrow." He squeezed her hand one last time and froze. Had it moved? Just the smallest pressure, so faint he might have imagined it? Daniel's heart hammered. He looked down at their joined hands, then at Lily's face, searching for any sign, any flicker of consciousness. Nothing. "Lily?" His voice cracked. "Sweetheart, can you hear me? Squeeze my hand if you can hear me." The monitors beeped their unchanging rhythm. The ventilator whispered. Daniel waited, barely breathing, hope and dread warring in his chest. 30 seconds passed. A minute. Nothing. Slowly, he released her hand and stepped back, running his fingers through his hair. Of course it was nothing. Just wishful thinking. Just his desperate heart playing tricks after another long day of pretending to be normal, pretending he wasn't dying inside, one evening at a time. "Good night, Lily," he said, his voice rough with suppressed emotion. "Daddy loves you." He walked out, closing the door softly behind him. In the parking lot of Riverside Long-Term Care Facility, sitting in a nondescript sedan 3 rows back from the entrance, a man named Michael Reeves lowered his camera and checked the timestamp on the last photo. 8:04 p.m. He scrolled through the evening's images. Daniel Reed entering at 6:11 p.m. Daniel Reed signing in. Daniel Reed disappearing into the elevator. Michael had been doing private investigation work for 20 years, mostly for lawyers and corporate clients. He'd followed cheating spouses, documented insurance fraud, and dug up dirt on executives threatening hostile takeovers. This job was different, simpler on the surface. Just find out where Daniel Reed goes every evening. But Michael had learned to trust his instincts, and his instincts told him there was more to this story. He uploaded the photos to his encrypted cloud drive and composed a brief email to Evelyn Cross. Subject: Reed. Initial report. Reed goes directly from office to Riverside Long-Term Care Facility in the Riverside District. Arrives 6:11 p.m. daily. Duration of visit approximately 2 hours. Facility specializes in comatose patients and severe neurological cases. Investigating further. We'll have full report Monday. He hit send and started his car. Inside the facility, unaware he was being watched, Daniel Reed rode the elevator down, nodded goodnight to George, and stepped out into the November cold. The city had fully embraced night now. Streetlights cast orange pools on empty sidewalks. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. The wind carried the smell of rain. Daniel pulled his coat tighter and began the walk to the subway, his footsteps echoing in the darkness. Behind him, room 314's lights dimmed automatically on their timer, leaving Lily in the soft glow of medical monitors, a small girl in a big bed, suspended between worlds, while her father walked away because visiting hours said he must. And tomorrow he would return because love said he must. And so the days passed, each one the same, each one different only in the particular shade of hope and heartbreak Daniel carried home. In her corner office, 43 floors above the city, Evelyn Cross sat in the dark, her computer screen the only light. Michael's email appeared in her inbox. She read it twice, then sat back in her chair, staring at nothing. A long-term care facility. Someone who comes before everything else. The pieces were starting to fall into place, and Evelyn wasn't sure she liked the picture they were forming. She closed her laptop and stood at her window, looking out at the city she'd conquered through sheer will and brilliant strategy. She'd built an empire on reading people, understanding their motivations, knowing which buttons to push and which strings to pull. But Daniel Reed had no buttons, no strings, just a quiet dignity and an unwavering commitment to something, someone she didn't yet understand. Evelyn checked her watch, 8:47 p.m. Somewhere out there, Daniel was heading home to whatever small apartment a man with his salary could afford. Tomorrow he would wake up and do it all again. And the next day. And the next. For what? For who? She needed to know. Not because it mattered to Meridian Financial's bottom line, not because it affected Daniel's performance, but because for the first time in longer than she could remember, Evelyn Cross had encountered something she couldn't acquire, couldn't understand, couldn't control. And it was eating her alive. She pulled out her phone and sent a text to Michael. I need everything. Medical records, family history, the whole story. Discretion absolute. The reply came within seconds. Understood. Evelyn set her phone down and returned to the window. Below, the city breathed and pulsed, a living organism of ambition and desperation. Somewhere in that vast sprawl, Daniel Reed was probably reading or watching television or staring at the ceiling, counting down the hours until he could return to room 314. Who are you? Evelyn whispered to the glass. And what are you protecting? The city had no answers, but Monday morning, Michael Reeves would. And Evelyn Cross, who had never met a problem she couldn't solve or a mystery she couldn't unravel, would finally understand why a brilliant man had chosen to sacrifice everything for someone she'd never met. The question was, what would she do with that knowledge? In the darkness of her office, surrounded by the trophies of her success, the awards, the framed magazine covers, the expensive art chosen more for investment than aesthetics, Evelyn felt something she hadn't felt in years, uncertainty, and beneath it, something even more dangerous, respect. The weekend passed the way all weekends passed for Daniel Reed, in careful increments of time measured between visits to room 314. Saturday morning at 10, Saturday evening at 6, Sunday morning at 9, Sunday evening at 5. 4 visits, each lasting exactly 2 hours, the maximum the facility allowed for non-immediate family emergencies. Except Lily was immediate family. She was all the family Daniel had left. Monday morning arrived with gray skies and the threat of rain. Daniel stood at his bathroom mirror, knotting his tie with the mechanical precision of routine. The face that looked back at him was the same one that had stared from this mirror for 3 years, hollow around the eyes, tight around the mouth, prematurely aged by a grief that had no expiration date. He arrived at Meridian Financial at 8:29 a.m., signed in with the lobby security, and rode the elevator to the 42nd floor. The office was already buzzing with Monday morning energy, people clutching coffee like lifelines, swapping weekend stories, complaining about traffic with the camaraderie of shared suffering. Daniel moved through it all like a ghost, offering nods where required, brief smiles where expected, and nothing more. His desk welcomed him with its familiar emptiness. He powered up his monitors, opened his email, and began the week's work with the focus that had made him invaluable and the detachment that made him unreachable. At 9:47 a.m., his phone buzzed with an internal message from Evelyn Cross's assistant. Ms. Cross requests your presence in her office at 10:15. Daniel stared at the message, a cold weight settling in his stomach. Friday's confrontation had been unusual enough, A follow-up, this soon felt ominous. He typed back. Confirmed. 28 minutes later, he stood outside Evelyn's office. Through the glass walls, he could see her on a phone call, pacing behind her desk with that predatory grace she brought to every negotiation. She saw him, gestured for him to enter, and pointed to a chair. Daniel sat and waited, hands folded in his lap, face carefully neutral. "I don't care what Peterson promised," Evelyn was saying into her phone, her voice sharp as cut glass. "The contract specifies quarterly deliverables, and we're 3 weeks past deadline. You have until Friday to remedy this, or we move to the penalty clauses. Your choice." She ended the call without waiting for a response and turned to Daniel. "Good morning." "Ms. Cross." She sat across from him, not behind her desk this time, in the matching chair that created an unsettling illusion of equality. For a long moment, she simply studied him, her expression unreadable. "I owe you an apology," she said finally. Daniel blinked. "I'm sorry?" "Friday, I overstepped. Your personal life is precisely that, personal. I had no right to press you for information you weren't willing to share." She leaned back, crossing her legs. "I value you as an employee, Daniel, and I let my curiosity override my professionalism. It won't happen again." The apology sounded genuine. It probably was genuine, but something in Evelyn's eyes, a calculation, a continued interest, made Daniel's shoulders tense. "I appreciate that," he said carefully. "And I apologize if I was curt. The question caught me off guard." "You weren't curt. You were honest." Evelyn smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I respect that. In fact, I respect you, Daniel, which is why I want to extend another offer, purely professional this time." Ms. Cross said, "Hear me out." She held up a hand. "Next month, we're hosting the annual Meridian Summit. 3 days, top executives from our international offices, major clients, potential investors. It's the most important networking event of our year." She paused. "I want you to present the quarterly analysis for the Asia-Pacific markets." Daniel's jaw tightened. "That's traditionally a senior vice president responsibility." "It is. And you do the work better than any of our senior vice presidents. Your analysis is sharper, your projections more accurate, your presentation of complex data more accessible." Evelyn leaned forward. "This is a showcase opportunity, Daniel, the kind of visibility that opens doors, the kind of exposure that transforms careers." "I'm not interested in transforming my career." "Why not?" The question hung between them, gentle but insistent. Daniel stood. "With respect, I thought we agreed my personal reasons were my own business." "We did. And they are." Evelyn remained seated, looking up at him with those sharp, assessing eyes. "But professionally speaking, I need to understand if there's anything Meridian can do to support you." "Flexible hours, remote work options. We're a progressive company, Daniel. If there are accommodations that would help you, there aren't." "Are you sure? Because if there's something in your life that requires a specific schedule, we can work around that. Other employees have managed." "Ms. Cross." Daniel's voice was quiet but firm. "I appreciate the offer. I truly do. But the answer is no. I will continue to do my job to the best of my ability within my current role and current hours. If that's not acceptable, I understand, but I won't be changing my parameters." For a long moment, they stared at each other. An impasse reached, a line drawn. Evelyn stood slowly. "It's acceptable, Daniel. You're too valuable to lose over scheduling conflicts." She walked to her desk, picked up a folder, and handed it to him. "These are the Johnson files you requested last week. I believe you're presenting the preliminary findings this afternoon?" "At 2:00. "Yes, ma'am." "I look forward to it." She returned to her desk, effectively dismissing him. "That's all." Daniel nodded and left, the folder clutched in his hand, his heart still racing from an encounter that had felt less like a professional discussion and more like a chess match where he couldn't see all the pieces. Behind him, Evelyn watched through the glass as he returned to his desk. Her phone buzzed, a text from Michael Reeves. "Full report ready. Can meet today?" She typed back, "Lunch. Carlisle Hotel, 12:30. Then she turned to her window and looked out at the city, wondering why she felt like she was about to cross a line she'd never be able to uncross. The morning crawled forward with agonizing slowness. Daniel threw himself into work, losing himself in numbers and projections where everything had clear answers and predictable outcomes. The Johnson presentation was solid. He'd spent 3 weeks preparing it, double-checking every figure, anticipating every question. At 1:47 p.m., so he gathered his materials and headed to conference room B. The presentation went flawlessly. 17 slides, 23 minutes, and a room full of impressed executives nodding at his conclusions. When he finished, even Marcus Chen, who usually found something to nitpick, offered genuine praise. "Brilliant work, Reed," Marcus said as the room emptied. "You made complex derivatives sound almost simple. That's a rare gift." "Thank you. You know, if you ever want to grab lunch and talk shop, I'm always interested in picking your brain about—" "I appreciate it, Marcus, but I don't do lunch." Marcus's smile faltered. "Right, of course, the mystery continues." Daniel packed his laptop, ignoring the comment, and returned to his desk. The clock read 2:31 p.m. 7 hours and 59 minutes until he could leave. 7 hours and 59 minutes until he could be where he needed to be. He opened a new spreadsheet and dove back into work, blocking out the world. Across town, in a private corner booth at the Carlisle Hotel's restaurant, Evelyn Cross sipped ice water and waited. The lunch crowd was thinning, business people returning to their offices, tourists heading out to see the sights. The booth afforded privacy, which was why she'd chosen it. Michael Reeves arrived at 12:33, sliding into the opposite seat with the practiced ease of someone comfortable in expensive surroundings despite not belonging to them. He was 51, gray-haired, unremarkable in every way except his eyes, sharp, observant, missing nothing. "Ms. Cross?" "Michael. Thank you for meeting on short notice." He pulled a thin folder from his briefcase and slid it across the table. "Everything you asked for, though I have to say this one's heavy." Evelyn's hand paused over the folder. "Heavy how?" "Open it. You'll see." She did. The first page was a basic dossier. Daniel Christopher Reed, born April 17, 1987. Education. Bachelor's degree in economics from State University, master's in financial analysis from Whitmore College. Employment history. 3 years at Barton & Associates, nearly 7 at Meridian Financial. No criminal record. No debt beyond a modest car loan, paid consistently. Credit score? 748. Unremarkable, on the surface. Evelyn turned the page, and there it was. Marriage license, Daniel Christopher Reed and Sarah Elizabeth Whitmore, June 12, 2012. A wedding photo. Daniel younger, smiling genuinely, his arm around a beautiful woman with dark hair and warm eyes. Birth certificate, Lily Ann Reed, March 3, 2014. Another photo. Daniel holding an infant, his expression radiant with new father joy. More photos, Lily as a toddler, gap-toothed and laughing. Lily on her first day of school, pink backpack almost as big as she was. Lily at a piano recital, serious and focused. Then the news clipping, dated September 23rd, 3 years ago. Local woman killed in multi-car accident. Sarah Reed, 34, was pronounced dead at the scene after a 3-vehicle collision on Highway 47 Thursday afternoon. Also injured was her daughter, Lily Reed, 8, who was transported to Mercy General Hospital in critical condition. Evelyn's breath caught. She turned the page. Medical records, heavily redacted, but enough was visible. Traumatic brain injury, induced coma, multiple surgeries, transferred to long-term care. Prognosis, uncertain. Current status, persistent vegetative state. "The mother died instantly," Michael said quietly. "The girl, she's been unconscious ever since. 3 years, 2 months, and counting. Reed visits her every single day, morning on weekends, evening on weekdays. Never misses. The care facility staff say he reads to her, talks to her, holds her hand for hours." Evelyn closed the folder, her hands trembling slightly. "The mother, Sarah, next of kin. Parents deceased. One sister lives in California, visits maybe twice a year according to facility staff. Sarah was an only parent to Lily. Her own parents died when she was young, raised by an aunt who passed away 5 years ago. So Daniel is alone, completely. The girl is his whole world, has been since the accident. Michael leaned back. Insurance covered the initial hospital stay, but long-term care isn't cheap. Riverside is one of the better facilities, runs about $6,500 a month. Reed's been paying out of pocket. That's why he lives in a one-bedroom apartment in Riverside, drives a 12-year-old Honda, and wears the same 3 suits on rotation. Every penny above basic survival goes to keeping his daughter in the best care he can afford. Evelyn stared at the folder. The promotions he turned down would have required longer hours, travel, evening commitments. Things he can't do because he has a standing appointment at 6:11 every night. Michael's voice softened. I've been doing this job 20 years, Ms. Cross. I followed embezzlers and adulterers and corporate spies. This guy? He's just a father who refuses to give up on his kid. That's it. That's the whole mystery. Does she respond? The daughter? No. According to the medical records I could access, there's been no change in 3 years. No improvement, no deterioration. She's just there, stable but unconscious. The doctors don't expect her to wake up. But he still goes. Every day. Rain, snow, doesn't matter. He's there. Michael paused. Why did you want to know this? Evelyn didn't answer immediately. She looked down at the folder, thinking about Daniel's quiet dignity, his refusal to explain, his absolute commitment to leaving at 5:30 no matter what. I thought he was hiding something, she said finally. Turns out he was hiding from something, from questions like mine, from pity, from people who'd tell him to move on. Are you going to use this information? Use it how? Michael shrugged. You're a powerful woman, Ms. Cross. You could make his life easier. Better insurance, salary increase, flexible hours. All things he'd refuse because he'd know I knew. Evelyn opened the folder again, looking at the photo of Lily at her piano recital. So small, so serious, so alive. He doesn't want help. He wants privacy. Then why investigate? It was a fair question. Evelyn closed the folder and met Michael's eyes. Because I wanted to understand what could make a man turn down everything I was offering. Money, advancement, attention from someone who could change his life. She smiled bitterly. Turns out the answer is simple. He already has something more valuable than anything I could give him. He has purpose. She pulled out her checkbook, wrote a number that made Michael's eyebrows rise, and slid it across the table. This conversation never happened. The investigation never happened. Delete everything. Ms. Cross, everything, Michael. I mean it. This man deserves his privacy. Michael pocketed the check and stood. Already done. He paused at the edge of the booth. For what it's worth, there are worse things in this world than a man who knows what matters. After he left, Evelyn sat alone in the booth, the folder open to the photo of Daniel with his infant daughter. His smile in that picture was so different from anything she'd seen on his face at work. Open, joyful, unburdened by the weight he now carried. She thought about Friday's confrontation, about this morning's job offer, about every time she'd pushed and prodded and tried to understand why Daniel Reed didn't want what everyone else wanted. Because he already had what everyone else was searching for, and he'd lost it, and he was spending every minute of every day refusing to let go of what remained. Evelyn closed the folder and signaled for the check. That evening, as Daniel sat in room 314 reading The Secret Garden to a daughter who couldn't hear him, Evelyn Cross sat in her corner office staring at nothing in particular. She thought about calling him, apologizing properly, offering help, real help, the kind that came with no strings and no expectations. But she knew what he'd say. The same thing he'd said every time. No. Thank you, but no. So instead, she opened her computer and began drafting a memo about the Riverside Initiative, a new corporate charity program focused on supporting families dealing with long-term medical care. Generous donations, no publicity, anonymous corporate sponsorship. She worked on it until midnight, crafting the language carefully, making sure there was no way to trace it back to any specific employee or situation. When she finished, she sat back and wondered if Daniel would ever know. Probably not, and that, she decided, was exactly how it should be. The next 3 weeks passed in careful silence. Daniel continued his routine. Work, Riverside. Home, repeat. Evelyn watched him from a distance, seeing things she'd never noticed before. The way his jaw tightened when people talked about weekend plans he'd never make. The way he checked his watch, not from boredom, but from counting down. The way he existed in the office like a man underwater, moving through a world that wasn't quite real. She stopped extending invitations, stopped asking questions, stopped trying to solve the puzzle of Daniel Reed because she'd already solved it, and the answer had humbled her more than she cared to admit. On a Thursday afternoon in early December, Marcus Chen appeared at Evelyn's door looking troubled. "Ms. Cross, do you have a minute?" "Of course. What is it?" Marcus closed the door. "It's about Reed, Daniel." Evelyn's expression didn't change, but her pulse quickened. "What about him?" "He's good, really good. You know that." "We all know that." Marcus ran a hand through his hair. 3 other firms have tried to recruit him in the past year. Headhunters are constantly calling. Jensen and Brooks offered him a senior analyst position at almost twice his current salary, and he turned it down. He turns them all down, always the same reason: can't commit to the hours. Marcus leaned against the desk. "But here's the thing, Whitmore Financial is making a serious play for him. 6-figure signing bonus, flexible schedule, work-from-home options 3 days a week. They're throwing everything at him." "When did this happen?" "They approached him yesterday. He's supposed to give them an answer by next week." Marcus met her eyes. "I think he's actually considering it." Evelyn's stomach tightened. "Why do you think that?" "Because for the first time, he didn't immediately say no. He said he'd think about it." Marcus shook his head. "If we lose him, Ms. Cross, it'll hurt. Not just his output, but morale. People respect Reed. He's proof that you can be brilliant without being cutthroat. If he leaves, it sends a message that Meridian doesn't value loyalty." After Marcus left, Evelyn sat very still, her mind racing. She could match Whitmore's offer, exceed it even, throw money and benefits at Daniel until the choice became obvious. But that wasn't what he needed. What he needed was something she couldn't give him: more time with his daughter, more flexibility, more life outside these walls. The realization stung more than she expected. At 5:27 p.m., she found herself walking toward Daniel's desk, drawn by impulse she didn't fully understand. He was packing his bag, the same routine, the same mechanical precision. "Daniel!" He looked up, surprise flickering across his face. "Ms. Cross." "Walk with me." They moved to the windows overlooking the city, away from listening ears. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and purple. "I heard about Whitmore's offer," Evelyn said. Daniel's expression closed off. "Word travels fast. Should I be worried?" "That depends on what you're worried about." Evelyn smiled despite herself. Even now, facing a life-changing decision, Daniel couldn't quite shed his honesty. "I'm worried about losing a valuable employee," she said. "I'm also worried about you making a decision based on short-term flexibility versus long-term stability." "With respect, Ms. Cross, I don't think in terms of long-term anymore. I think in terms of today, tomorrow, the day after that." Daniel's voice was quiet but steady. "Whitmore is offering me something Meridian can't. Time. 3 work-from-home days means I can be closer to where I need to be. It means I don't lose 6 hours a week to commuting. It means you can spend more time with her." The words were out before Evelyn could stop them. Daniel froze. "What?" "Your daughter, Lily." Evelyn met his eyes, seeing the shock, the betrayal, the anger building. "I know, Daniel. I'm sorry, but I know." For a long moment, Daniel said nothing. The sunset painted his face in shades of gold and shadow, making him look both younger and infinitely older. "How long?" His voice was barely a whisper. 3 weeks. I hired an investigator. He found out where you go, why you go. I saw the medical records, the news clipping, the photos." Evelyn took a breath. "And then I told him to delete everything. I haven't told anyone. I won't tell anyone. Your privacy is yours, Daniel. I needed to understand. You had no right. I know. You violated my trust. I know. I should quit. Right now. Tonight." "You should." Evelyn's voice cracked slightly. "But I'm asking you not to. Not because of Meridian, not because of your career, but because I'm going to match Whitmore's offer. Exceed it, if that's what it takes. Flexible hours, remote work, whatever you need to be there for Lily while still doing what you're brilliant at." Daniel stared at her. Why? Because 3 weeks ago, I learned something about sacrifice that I'd forgotten in 20 years of climbing corporate ladders. Evelyn's hands tightened on the window railing. I learned that some people measure success differently, and maybe they're measuring it right. The silence stretched between them, filled with unspoken things. I don't want pity, Daniel said finally. This isn't pity, it's respect. Evelyn turned to face him fully. Think about it at least. Don't make a decision based on anger at me. Make it based on what's best for Lily. Daniel's jaw worked. His eyes were bright with emotion he was fighting to contain. I need to go, he said. Of course. He walked away, bag over his shoulder, moving toward the elevator with the same measured pace. But something was different. A tension in his shoulders, a fracture in the routine. Evelyn watched him go, wondering if she'd just saved his career or destroyed whatever fragile trust had existed between them. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. She moved. Evelyn frowned. Wrong number, probably. She deleted it. At Riverside Long-Term Care Facility, Daniel signed in with George and took the elevator to the 3rd floor, his mind still reeling from Evelyn's revelation. She knew. Someone had been watching him, investigating him, violating the privacy he'd fought so hard to maintain. He should be furious. He was furious. But underneath the anger was something else, a strange, unexpected relief. Because for 3 years he'd carried this weight alone, and now someone else knew, someone who mattered in the world he inhabited 9 hours a day. He pushed open the door to room 314 and stopped. Nurse Patterson was at Lily's bedside, checking the monitors with an expression Daniel had never seen before, excitement barely contained. Daniel, she said, turning, I was just about to call you. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Something's different. Patterson gestured to the monitors. Her brain activity spiked about 20 minutes ago, just for a few seconds, but it was there. The first significant change we've seen in 3 years. Daniel's bag hit the floor. What does that mean? I don't know yet. Dr. Morrison is reviewing the data. It could be nothing, just random neural firing, but it could also be... She trailed off, unwilling to offer false hope. Could be what? The beginning of something. We don't know, Daniel. We just don't know. He moved to Lily's bedside on legs that felt like water. She looked the same, peaceful, unchanged, suspended in that terrible stillness. But the monitors showed something different. Numbers he'd memorized, patterns he'd learned to read like a second language. And there, in the data, was the smallest deviation from the endless flat line of unconsciousness. Daniel took Lily's hand. Sweetheart, he whispered, I'm here. If you can hear me, if you're trying to come back, I'm right here. The monitors beeped their rhythm. The ventilator whispered, and in the space between heartbeats, in the gap between hope and despair, something shifted. Daniel didn't move from Lily's bedside for the next 4 hours, long past when visiting hours ended. George had come up twice to gently remind him of the time, but Nurse Patterson waved him off both times with a look that said this was different, this mattered, let him stay. Dr. Morrison arrived at 9:47 p.m., a tall woman in her 50s with gray-streaked hair and the kind of calm competence that came from 30 years of neurology. She studied the monitors, reviewed the printouts, and examined Lily with gentle, practiced hands while Daniel watched every movement with the intensity of a man trying to read prophecy in tea leaves. Talk to me straight, Daniel said when she finally stepped back. No medical jargon. No protecting my feelings. What does this mean? Dr. Morrison pulled up a chair and sat across from him, their knees almost touching in the small space. 3 years ago, Lily suffered massive trauma to her brain. The swelling, the hemorrhaging, we did everything we could, but the damage was severe. She's been in what we call a persistent vegetative state. Brainstem function intact, which keeps her breathing and her heart beating, but no higher brain activity. No consciousness, no awareness, no response to stimuli. I know all this, Daniel said, his voice strained, but something changed tonight. Yes, something changed. Dr. Morrison pointed to one of the monitors. This measures brainwave activity. For 3 years, Lily's patterns have been essentially flat in the areas associated with consciousness. Tonight, for approximately 14 seconds, we saw activity in her frontal cortex. Theta waves, similar to what we see in early sleep stages or deep meditation. Daniel's heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. What does that mean? Is she waking up? I don't know. It could mean her brain is beginning to heal in ways we didn't think possible. It could mean random neural firing that signifies nothing. It could mean she's experiencing some level of awareness we can't measure yet. Dr. Morrison leaned forward. Daniel, I need you to understand something. This is one spike, one brief moment in 3 years of nothing. I will not promise you that this is the beginning of recovery. The odds are still overwhelmingly against us. But there's a chance. There's always been a chance. It was just infinitesimally small. Now it's... She paused, choosing her words carefully. Now it's slightly less infinitesimally small. But it's there. Dr. Morrison's professional mask cracked slightly, revealing the human underneath. Yes, Daniel, it's there. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak, and turned back to Lily. She looked exactly the same as she had that morning, that week, that year. But something fundamental had shifted in the universe. Some cosmic dial turned a fraction of a degree toward hope. What happens now? He asked. We watch? We wait? We run more tests tomorrow, EEG, functional MRI, if we can arrange it. We document everything. Dr. Morrison stood. And you continue doing exactly what you've been doing, reading to her, talking to her, being present. If there's any chance her consciousness is starting to emerge, your voice, your presence, those could be the anchors helping her find her way back. After Dr. Morrison left, Daniel sat in the dimness of room 314, holding Lily's hand, feeling the steady pulse of her heartbeat through her thin wrist. I felt you move earlier, he whispered. Just the smallest squeeze. I thought I'd imagined it, but I didn't, did I? You're trying to come back to me. The monitors beeped. The ventilator whispered. The world outside continued its relentless turning. Your mom would be so proud of you, little flower. So proud of how strong you are. Daniel's voice cracked. I need you to keep fighting, okay? I need you to know that I'm right here, that I've been here every single day, and I'm not going anywhere, not ever. He stayed until midnight when Nurse Patterson finally insisted he go home and sleep. She needs you rested, Patterson said gently. If things start changing, we need you sharp, not exhausted. Go home, Daniel. We'll call if anything happens. The subway ride home felt surreal, the fluorescent lights too bright, the other passengers too loud. Daniel kept checking his phone, half expecting a call telling him to come back, that Lily had opened her eyes, that the miracle he'd prayed for every night was finally happening. The call didn't come. He reached his apartment, a one-bedroom in a building that had seen better decades, at 12:47 a.m. The space was Spartan. A couch, a TV he rarely watched, a small kitchen table where he ate meals he barely tasted. The bedroom held a bed, a dresser, and an entire wall of photo albums and framed pictures. Lily at 2, covered in birthday cake. Lily at 5, missing her front teeth. Lily at 7, holding her first piano trophy. And Sarah, beautiful Sarah, in dozens of shots, laughing, dancing, holding their daughter, looking at Daniel with eyes full of love and forever promises. He stood in front of that wall, touching a photo of the 3 of them at the beach, taken 6 months before the accident. They looked so happy, so ignorant of the devastation waiting just around the corner. She moved, Daniel told the photos. She's trying to come back. Sarah smiled from the frame, frozen in eternal summer, and Daniel felt the familiar ache of her absence, duller now than it had been 3 years ago, but never fully gone. He showered, lay down, and stared at the ceiling until exhaustion finally dragged him under. The next morning, Daniel called in sick for the first time in nearly 7 years. He sent a brief email to his supervisor. Family emergency. We'll update Monday. He didn't mention Evelyn, didn't think about Whitmore's offer or Meridian's counteroffer or anything beyond getting back to Riverside as fast as possible. The facility's morning routine was different from evenings, brighter, busier, filled with physical therapists and occupational therapists and the controlled chaos of institutional care. Daniel signed in at 7:53 a.m., George greeting him with raised eyebrows but no questions. Room 314 was occupied by Dr. Morrison and two other specialists when Daniel arrived. They were setting up equipment for the EEG, attaching electrodes to Lily's scalp with practiced efficiency. "Morning," Dr. Morrison said. "Any trouble getting away from work?" "No trouble." She studied him with the kind of look that said she knew exactly what sacrifice that simple answer represented. "Good. We're going to monitor her brain activity continuously for the next 72 hours. If there's another spike, we want to catch it in real time and see what might be triggering it." "What could trigger it?" "Auditory stimulation, tactile stimulation, temperature changes, even random neural reorganization." Dr. Morrison finished adjusting one of the electrodes. "Or nothing at all. The brain is still largely a mystery to us, Daniel. We're mapping uncharted territory here." The testing took 3 hours. Daniel sat in the corner, watching, occasionally answering questions about Lily's medical history, mostly just being present in case she needed him. At 11:15 a.m., his phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn. "Marcus said you called in sick. Everything okay?" Daniel stared at the message, torn between anger at her intrusion and gratitude for her concern. Finally, he typed, "Family matter. I'll explain Monday." Her response came immediately. "Take whatever time you need. Your position is secure." He pocketed the phone without responding. By noon, the specialists had finished and departed, leaving instructions for the nursing staff and promising to review the data remotely. Daniel settled into his familiar chair and pulled out The Secret Garden, opening to their bookmarked page. "Okay, sweetheart, where were we?" He scanned the text. "Ah, right. Mary has just discovered the hidden door." He read for 2 hours, his voice steady and calm, occasionally pausing to squeeze Lily's hand or brush hair from her forehead. Nurse Patterson came and went, checking vitals, adjusting IV drips, offering Daniel coffee he accepted but barely touched. At 2:34 p.m., in the middle of a sentence about roses and robin redbreasts, the monitor's pitch changed, just slightly, just for a moment. Daniel's head snapped up. "What was that?" Patterson was at the monitors instantly, her eyes scanning the readouts. "Brain activity spike. Smaller than last night, but definitely there." She grabbed her tablet, logging the time and duration. "What were you doing?" "Reading. Just reading." "Keep going. Don't stop. If auditory stimulation is triggering this, we need to know." Daniel's hands trembled as he found his place again. He continued reading, his voice slightly unsteady now, his heart racing with a hope so fierce it hurt. 10 minutes later, another spike. Then nothing for 40 minutes. Then another, this time accompanied by the smallest flutter of Lily's eyelids, so brief that Daniel wasn't sure he'd seen it. "Did you see that?" he asked Patterson. "I saw it." Her voice was carefully neutral, but her eyes were bright. "Daniel, I need to call Dr. Morrison. Keep talking to her. Read, sing, tell her about your day. Anything. Just keep your voice going." She left the room, speaking urgently into her phone, while Daniel leaned close to Lily and whispered, "That's it, baby girl. I know you can hear me. I know you're trying. Just keep fighting. Keep coming back." Doctor. Morrison arrived within 30 minutes, unusually rushed, her professional calm fractured by something that looked almost like excitement. "Show me the data." Patterson pulled it up on her tablet, a graph showing brain activity over the past 4 hours. The spikes were irregular, unpredictable, but undeniably there. 6 of them. 6 moments of consciousness breaking through 3 years of silence. "This is extraordinary," Dr. Morrison murmured, studying the patterns. "Daniel, has anything else been different today? Different routine? Different topics in your reading?" "No, same book we've been reading. Same chair, same—" He stopped. "Wait. I haven't been here during the day in almost 2 years. Usually I come in the evening." Different light levels, different ambient noise, different circadian timing. Dr. Morrison was thinking out loud, her mind clearly racing. Her brain might be more responsive during certain hours. We need to test this. Can you be here tomorrow morning? Same time? I'll be here. And tomorrow evening at your usual time. We'll compare the data and see if there's a pattern. Daniel nodded, barely processing the words, his entire focus on Lily's face. Was there more color in her cheeks? Or was he imagining it, desperate for any sign of change? The afternoon dissolved into evening. Daniel stayed, reading until his voice grew hoarse, then just talking about work, about the weather, about memories of Sarah and family dinners and piano recitals. Patterson brought him soup he didn't remember eating and water he drank without tasting. At 7:45 p.m., during a story about Lily's 6th birthday party, her right index finger twitched. Daniel stopped mid-sentence, staring at their joined hands. Lily? It happened again, a clear, unmistakable movement. Patterson! His voice cracked with emotion. She's moving! The nurse was there instantly, checking, documenting, her professional training warring with the wonder on her face. Lily, sweetheart, if you can hear Daddy, move your finger again. Nothing. Please, baby, just once more. The seconds stretched into minutes. Daniel held his breath, willing it to happen, praying to forces he'd stopped believing in 3 years ago. And then, so faint he almost missed it, Lily's finger curled slightly against his palm. Patterson grabbed her radio. I need Dr. Morrison in 314, now. The next hour was a blur of activity. Doctors, tests, measurements, hushed, urgent conversations just outside the door. Daniel stayed at Lily's bedside through all of it, holding her hand, whispering encouragement, his face wet with tears he didn't bother wiping away. At 9:17 p.m., Dr. Morrison pulled him aside. Daniel, I need to manage your expectations here. What we're seeing is encouraging, very encouraging. But Lily is still in a coma. These movements, these spikes in brain activity, they don't necessarily indicate consciousness. They could be reflexive, automatic responses without actual awareness behind them. But they could indicate consciousness. Dr. Morrison hesitated, then nodded. They could. The pattern suggests her brain is becoming more active, more responsive. Whether that translates to actual awareness, to the person you knew beginning to return, we simply don't know yet. How long until we do know? Days, weeks, maybe months? Or it could happen tomorrow. Recovery from this kind of trauma doesn't follow a predictable timeline. She put a hand on his shoulder. What I can tell you is that in 30 years of neurology, I've seen 3 patients recover from vegetative states this prolonged. 3 out of hundreds. The odds are still against us, Daniel, but for the first time since Lily arrived here, I'm allowing myself to hope. Daniel couldn't speak. He could only nod, his throat too tight for words. Go home, Dr. Morrison said gently. Rest. Come back in the morning. If anything changes tonight, we'll call immediately. He didn't want to leave. Every instinct screamed at him to stay, to be there in case Lily opened her eyes, in case she called for him, in case the miracle he'd waited 3 years for finally happened. But Dr. Morrison was right. If Lily was coming back, she'd need him strong, not exhausted and running on fumes. At 9:45 p.m., Daniel kissed his daughter's forehead and whispered, I love you. I'll be back in the morning. Keep fighting, little flower. The subway ride home was a disorienting mix of euphoria and terror. Hope was a dangerous thing. He'd learned that over the past 3 years. Hope could sustain you, but it could also destroy you when it was ripped away. He checked his phone and found 7 missed calls and a dozen texts. 3 from Marcus, asking if everything was okay. 2 from his supervisor, concerned about the sudden absence, and 2 from Evelyn. The first text was from early afternoon. If you need anything, time off, resources, anything, just ask. The second was from an hour ago. I know I have no right to ask, but is Lily okay? Daniel stared at that message. She'd used Lily's name, she knew. And instead of anger, he felt only a strange kind of relief. He typed back, she's showing signs, first time in 3 years. Doctors are cautiously optimistic. The response came while he was still holding the phone. Thank God. Take all the time you need. I mean it. Then, after a pause, another message. I'm sorry for invading your privacy, but I'm grateful I know because it means I can do this. Effective immediately. You have unlimited paid leave for family medical reasons. When you come back, we'll discuss permanent accommodations. Your job will be waiting. Daniel read it 3 times, not quite believing what he was seeing. Why? He typed. Evelyn's response took longer this time. Because 3 weeks ago, I asked what could be more important than career advancement. You didn't answer, but now I know. And you were right. He didn't respond, couldn't respond. He just sat on the subway, tears streaming down his face, while strangers politely pretended not to notice. At home, he stood in front of the wall of photographs again, looking at Sarah's smile, at Lily's gap-toothed grin, at the family they'd been before the universe had torn them apart. "She moved," he told Sarah's picture. "Our baby moved. She's trying to come back." He fell asleep on the couch, still in his clothes, his phone clutched in his hand in case the hospital called. The call came at 3:47 a.m. Daniel was awake before the second ring. "Hello? Daniel, it's Dr. Morrison. You need to come to the hospital, now." His heart stopped. "Is she—" "She's stable, but she's showing significant activity, REM patterns, increased heart rate, muscle movement. Daniel, I think she might be transitioning out of the coma." He was moving before she finished the sentence, grabbing his keys, his wallet, his coat. "I'm on my way." "There's something else." Dr. Morrison's voice changed, became softer. "About 20 minutes ago, she vocalized. Just a sound, not words, but Daniel, she made a sound. Her vocal cords engaged. That hasn't happened in 3 years." The phone slipped from Daniel's hand. He caught it fumbling, his whole body shaking. "I'll be there in 15 minutes. He ran the 4 blocks to where his old Honda was parked, drove through empty pre-dawn streets with a recklessness born of desperation, parked illegally outside Riverside, and sprinted through the lobby past a startled night security guard. The elevator took eternities. The hallway stretched like a nightmare corridor, room 314 impossibly far away. And then he was there. The room was full of people. Dr. Morrison, 2 nurses, a respiratory therapist, all clustered around Lily's bed with equipment and clipboards and the controlled urgency of medical professionals witnessing something rare. They parted as Daniel entered. Lily lay in the bed, still connected to her monitors, still breathing with the ventilator's assistance. But something was different. Her face held tension that hadn't been there before, muscles engaged, expression shifting subtly, eyelids moving beneath closed lids in the rapid dance of REM sleep. She looked less like a porcelain doll and more like a sleeping child. "Talk to her," Dr. Morrison said quietly. "We need to see how she responds." Daniel moved to the bedside on legs that barely held him. He took Lily's hand, feeling warmth, feeling tension, feeling life in a way he hadn't felt in 3 years. "Lily," he said, his voice breaking on her name. "It's Daddy." "I'm here, baby. I'm right here." On the monitor, her brain activity spiked, sharp, clear, undeniable. "I know you're trying to wake up. I know you're fighting your way back. You're the bravest person I've ever known, little flower. So brave, and I need you to keep going, keep trying. Come back to me." Lily's eyelids fluttered. The room went silent, except for the machines. "That's it, sweetheart. Open your eyes. Let me see those beautiful eyes." Her face scrunched, the expression achingly familiar. The same face she'd made as a baby fighting sleep, as a toddler resisting bedtime, as a little girl trying to stay awake for one more story. And then, so slowly it seemed to take forever and no time at all, Lily's eyes opened. They were unfocused, confused, the pupils contracting in the room's dim light. But they were open. After 3 years, 2 months, and 18 days of darkness, Lily Reed's eyes were open. "Lily?" Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. Her gaze drifted, not fixing on anything, not quite seeing. But then, slowly, incrementally, her eyes tracked toward the sound of his voice and found his face. For one perfect, crystalline moment, father and daughter looked at each other across the vast chasm of lost time. Then Lily's eyes fluttered closed again, her face relaxing back into sleep. "No, no, no," Daniel begged. "Stay with me, please stay with me." "Daniel." Dr. Morrison's hand on his shoulder, firm but gentle. "Let her rest. That took enormous effort. Her brain needs to process, to recover." "But she was awake. She saw me." "Yes, she was awake. She saw you." Dr. Morrison was smiling through tears of her own, and that means everything just changed. The sun rose over the city while Daniel sat beside his daughter, holding her hand, watching her sleep. Real sleep this time, not the awful stillness of coma, but the natural rest of exhaustion. Nurses came and went. Dr. Morrison made calls to specialists, to therapists, to people who needed to know that the impossible had just become possible. Someone brought Daniel coffee. Someone else brought food he couldn't eat. None of it mattered. All that mattered was the small hand in his, warm and alive and occasionally twitching as Lily's brain navigated whatever dreams were finally returning after 3 years of nothing. At 7:23 a.m., Daniel's phone buzzed with a text from Evelyn. "Any news?" His fingers trembled as he typed. She opened her eyes, just for a moment, but she saw me. She's coming back. The response was immediate. "I'm coming to the hospital. You don't need to do that." "I know, but I'm coming anyway." Daniel didn't have the energy to argue. He set the phone down and returned his attention to Lily, memorizing the new details, the way her chest rose and fell more naturally, the slight color in her cheeks, the tiny movements of her face as sleep took her deeper. "Welcome back, little flower," he whispered. "We have so much catching up to do." Outside, the city woke to another ordinary Friday. Traffic built, coffee shops filled, people rushed to jobs and obligations, and all the things that seemed so urgent until you spent 3 years watching someone you love hover between existence and absence. Daniel understood, in a way he hadn't before, exactly what mattered and what didn't. And for the first time in 3 years, he allowed himself to believe that the future might hold something more than endless waiting. Evelyn Cross arrived at Riverside Long-Term Care Facility at 8:42 a.m., carrying 2 cups of coffee and looking distinctly out of place in her tailored suit among the worn furniture and faded walls. George at the security desk did a double-take at the sight of her. People who wore $1,000 shoes didn't typically visit this building. "I'm here to see Daniel Reed," she said. He's with his daughter, Lily. Room 314. George checked his log, then his face softened with recognition. "You're the first visitor Daniel's had besides his sister-in-law in 3 years. He's still up there. Take the elevator to 3, turn right." Evelyn found room 314 by following the sound of quiet activity, medical staff moving with purpose, equipment being wheeled into place, the controlled urgency of professionals responding to something extraordinary. She stopped in the doorway. Daniel sat in a chair pulled close to the hospital bed, still wearing yesterday's clothes, unshaven, exhausted, and more alive than Evelyn had ever seen him. He was talking softly to the small girl in the bed, a child who looked impossibly fragile, surrounded by tubes and monitors, but whose face held an expression Evelyn recognized from the photos in Michael's report. Peaceful sleep, rather than unconscious absence. "I brought coffee," Evelyn said quietly. Daniel's head turned, surprise flickering across his face. "Miss Cross? You didn't have to come." "I know." She stepped into the room, offering him one of the cups. But when someone you respect tells you their child just woke up after 3 years, you show up. That's what decent people do. He accepted the coffee with hands that trembled slightly. "Thank you." Evelyn looked at Lily, really looked at her, seeing not the medical case from a file, but the living, breathing reason Daniel Reed had rebuilt his entire life around a single principle: be there. "She's beautiful," Evelyn said softly. "She is." Daniel's voice caught. "She looks like her mother." They stood in silence for a moment, watching Lily sleep. Outside, morning traffic hummed. Inside, the monitors beeped their steady reassurance that life continued, that hearts beat, that impossible things sometimes happened. "How long can you stay away from work?" Evelyn asked. "I don't know. As long as she needs me." Daniel rubbed his face. "I haven't even thought about Whitmore's offer, or your counteroffer, or any of it. Right now, none of that exists." "Good. It shouldn't." Evelyn pulled up another chair and sat, an incongruous sight in her executive attire beside a hospital bed. "I meant what I said in my text. Take all the time you need. When you're ready to come back, if you're ready to come back, we'll make whatever arrangements necessary." "Why are you doing this?" The question hung in the air between them, direct and honest in the way Daniel's questions always were. Evelyn considered her answer carefully. 3 weeks ago, I thought I understood what drive looked like, what dedication meant, what it took to be successful." She gestured around the small room. "Then I learned about this, about you spending every evening for 3 years sitting beside your daughter, reading to her, talking to her, refusing to give up even when every medical professional told you there was no hope. She met his eyes. You've been succeeding at something far more important than anything that happens at Meridian Financial, Daniel. I was just too blind to see it. I'm not special. I'm just a father. No, you're a father who kept showing up. Do you know how rare that is? How many people in your situation would have eventually moved on, told themselves they'd done enough, convinced themselves that an hour a week was sufficient? Evelyn's voice was fierce. You never missed a day. Not one. That's not just love, Daniel. That's devotion that most people can't even comprehend. Before Daniel could respond, Dr. Morrison entered, her energy crackling with barely contained excitement. Daniel, she's been showing increased activity for the past 20 minutes. Brain patterns indicate she might be approaching another waking period. She noticed Evelyn and paused. I'm sorry, visiting hours are limited to immediate family. She's fine, Daniel said. This is Evelyn Cross, my employer. She knows about Lily. Dr. Morrison's expression shifted to something assessing. The one who gave you unlimited leave? That's me, Evelyn confirmed. Then you can stay, but quietly. Dr. Morrison turned back to Daniel. I want to try something. When she wakes, if she wakes, I want you to ask her simple questions. Her name, if she knows who you are, basic orientation questions. We need to assess her cognitive function, see how much she remembers, how much the trauma affected her mental capabilities. Daniel's face went pale. What if she doesn't remember? What if the injury? One step at a time. Let's see what happens. Dr. Morrison checked the monitors. Her REM activity is increasing. Could be any minute now. The next 17 minutes felt like 17 hours. Daniel held Lily's hand, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. Evelyn sat quietly in the corner, feeling like an intruder, but unable to leave, drawn by something she couldn't quite name. At 9:07 a.m., Lily's eyelids began to flutter. Daniel leaned forward. Lily? Sweetheart, can you hear me? Her eyes opened slowly, with obvious effort, pupils adjusting to the light. This time they focused faster, finding Daniel's face with less wandering. Hi, baby, Daniel whispered, his voice breaking. I'm here. Daddy's here. Lily's mouth moved. No sound came out at first, just the ghost of words. Then, barely audible, scratchy from 3 years of disuse. Duh! The monitor screamed as Daniel's heart rate spiked. He was wearing a visitor badge that tracked vitals, something Dr. Morrison had insisted on after he nearly passed out from stress earlier. Yes, that's right. It's Daddy. I'm right here. Tears were streaming down his face. Do you know who you are? Can you tell me your name? Lily's brow furrowed with concentration. Her lips formed shapes, testing sounds. Lee. Lily. Dr. Morrison was writing frantically, documenting everything. Good. Very good. Lily, do you know how old you are? Confusion crossed the girl's face. Her eyes shifted from Daniel to the doctor to the unfamiliar room. 8? Daniel's breath caught. She thought she was still 8, the age she'd been when the accident happened. Close, sweetheart, he said gently. You're 11 now. You've been asleep for a long time. Tired, Lily whispered. So tired. I know. It's okay to rest. You're doing so well. Daniel kissed her forehead. I love you so much. Love you, Lily murmured, her eyes already drifting closed. Don't go. I won't. I'm staying right here. Within seconds, she was asleep again, her breathing deep and even. Dr. Morrison set down her tablet, her hands shaking slightly. That was remarkable. Name recognition, self-awareness, language processing, emotional connection, all functioning. She's lost 3 years of memory, but her core cognitive abilities appear intact. She's really coming back, Daniel said, not quite believing it even as he said it. She is. It's going to be a long recovery. Physical therapy, occupational therapy, psychological support to help her process the time loss. But Daniel, Doctor, Morrison's voice was thick with emotion. Your daughter is coming back. Evelyn watched from her corner as Daniel broke down completely, his shoulders shaking with sobs he'd been holding back for 3 years. She looked away, giving him what privacy she could in the small room, and found herself blinking back her own tears. Over the next 6 hours, Lily woke 3 more times. Each period of consciousness lasted longer, 2 minutes, then 5, then nearly 10. Each time she was more present, more aware, though clearly confused about where she was and why everything felt so wrong. "Where's Mommy?" she asked during the 4th waking, her voice still weak but gaining strength. Daniel's face crumpled. This was the conversation he'd been dreading, the truth he'd have to tell her eventually. "Sweetheart, do you remember the car ride, the day you and Mommy were coming to pick me up from work?" Lily's expression went distant, searching. There was a red light. And then fear crept into her eyes. There was a noise, a big noise. And then I don't remember. There was an accident, a bad one. Daniel took both her hands in his. "Mommy didn't make it, baby. She died in the accident. I'm so sorry." The girl's face transformed, grief and confusion and loss all crashing together. No, that's not. Mommy was just, we were just, I know. To you, it feels like yesterday. But it's been 3 years. Daniel's voice was steady despite the tears on his face. "You got hurt very badly. You've been in the hospital all this time, asleep while your body healed." Lily started crying, the sound heartbreaking from someone so small and fragile. Daniel gathered her carefully against his chest, mindful of the tubes and wires, and let her sob out her grief for a mother she'd lost yesterday, that everyone else had been mourning for years. Evelyn slipped out of the room, unable to watch anymore without breaking down herself. She found an empty waiting area and sat heavily, her carefully constructed composure finally cracking. She'd built an empire on rational decisions, strategic thinking, emotional detachment. She'd prided herself on never letting feelings interfere with business, on making the hard choices that success required. And here was Daniel Reed, who'd sacrificed every opportunity for advancement, who'd lived in poverty to afford his daughter's care, who'd spent 3 years reading to someone who couldn't hear him, and he'd been right. He'd been right about everything. "Ms. Cross?" Evelyn looked up to find Nurse Patterson standing there with a box of tissues. "Thought you might need these," Patterson said kindly. "It's a lot to process, even for visitors." "How does he do it?" Evelyn asked. "How did he stay hopeful for 3 years when everyone said there was no chance?" Patterson sat beside her. "He didn't stay hopeful, not always. I've seen him in the depths of despair, ready to give up, but every time he'd come back the next day anyway. Hope or no hope, he showed up. That's love, Ms. Cross. Real love doesn't need hope. It just needs commitment." Evelyn wiped her eyes, mascara probably ruined beyond repair, and didn't care. "I offered him promotions, salary increases, networking opportunities. I thought I was offering him the world." "You were offering him your world," Patterson said gently. "But he's been living in a different one. Doesn't make either wrong, just different priorities. I want to help, really help, not just throw money at the problem. But I don't know how." Patterson smiled. "You already are. You gave him time. That's the only resource that matters right now. Everything else, he'll figure out." Back in room 314, Lily had cried herself back to sleep in Daniel's arms. Dr. Morrison was conferring with the respiratory therapist about removing the ventilator. Lily's breathing had strengthened enough that she might not need it anymore. "We'll try weaning her off over the next 48 hours, Dr. Morrison explained. If she can maintain adequate oxygen levels on her own, we'll extubate. That's a huge milestone." Daniel nodded, barely processing the medical terminology, his entire focus on the small body tucked against him. She felt so fragile, so impossibly light. 3 years of muscle atrophy had left her weighing less than she had at age 8. "The physical recovery will be extensive," Dr. Morrison continued. "She'll need to relearn basic motor skills, walking, fine motor control, coordination. Her muscles have been unused for 3 years. It'll be like teaching a toddler all over again." "I don't care how long it takes." "I know you don't. But Daniel, you need to prepare yourself for a marathon, not a sprint. Lily's going to need months, maybe years of intensive therapy. She'll be frustrated, in pain, angry about everything she's lost. And you'll be the person she takes it out on because you're the safe space." "I can handle it." "Can you?" Dr. Morrison's voice was gentle but firm. Because from what I've seen, you've spent 3 years in survival mode. Now you'll need to transition into recovery mode, which is different. It means making hard decisions about her care, about your own well-being, about accepting help from people who want to support you. Daniel looked up at her. I've never been good at accepting help. I've noticed, but this isn't about you anymore. It's about giving Lily the best possible chance at recovery. And that means you staying healthy, rested, and emotionally stable. You can't pour from an empty cup, Daniel. Before he could respond, Evelyn reappeared in the doorway, her makeup repaired, her composure mostly restored. I need to head back to the office, she said. But Daniel, I meant what I said. Take whatever time you need. And if there's anything at all, that would make this easier, you tell me. You've already done more than enough. I haven't done anything yet. Evelyn pulled a business card from her purse and wrote on the back. This is my personal cell phone. Not my assistant, not my office line, my actual phone. If you need something at 3 a.m, you call. If Lily needs something, you call. If you just need to talk to someone who understands that work isn't the center of the universe, you call. Daniel took the card, staring at the number. Why are you doing all this, really? Evelyn looked at Lily sleeping in his arms, at the bare room with its medical equipment and institutional walls, at the man who'd given up everything for this moment. Because someone should have been in your corner 3 years ago and no one was. Because I have the power to make your life easier, and I've been using it to make it harder. And because... She paused, choosing her words carefully. Because watching you fight for your daughter has reminded me what integrity actually looks like. I want to be the kind of person who supports that, not someone who tries to exploit it for corporate gain. Daniel's eyes glistened. Thank you. For understanding, for this, for everything. Don't thank me yet. I'm still figuring out how to be a decent human being instead of just a successful executive. Evelyn managed a small smile. It's a work in progress. After she left, Daniel sat with Lily for another 2 hours, just holding her, feeling her breathe, marveling at the miracle of her presence. Around him, the hospital continued its routines. Meals delivered, medications administered, visiting hours enforced, and then relaxed when Dr. Morrison explained the special circumstances. At 3:15 p.m., Lily woke again. This time her eyes were clearer, more focused. Daddy? I'm here, little flower. I'm really 11? You really are. She was quiet for a long moment, processing. Did I miss my 9th birthday? And my 10th? Daniel's throat tightened. Yes, sweetheart. But we can celebrate them now, all together if you want. Make up for lost time. What grade should I be in? 6th grade. But don't worry about school right now. You'll catch up when you're ready. Lily looked around the room with more awareness. How long do I have to stay here? I don't know yet. The doctors say you're doing great, but you need to get stronger. Learn to walk again. Use your hands again. Your body forgot how to do a lot of things while you were asleep. Fear flickered across her face. Will I be able to play piano again? Daniel thought about the piano gathering dust in storage, sold to help pay for her care in the first year. He thought about the recitals she'd missed, the music lessons that had ended, the childhood stolen by trauma. Yes, he said firmly. It might take time, but yes. You can do anything you set your mind to. You're the strongest person I know. I don't feel strong. I feel weak and tired and everything hurts. That's because you've been asleep for 3 years. Your muscles need to remember how to work. But they will, I promise. And I'll be right here helping you every step of the way. Lily reached up with obvious effort and touched his face. You look tired too, Daddy. I'm okay. I'm better than okay. You're awake. You're talking to me. That's all I need. I love you. I love you too, little flower, more than you'll ever know. She drifted off again, her small hand still touching his cheek, and Daniel finally allowed himself to believe that the nightmare was ending, that they were moving towards something better, that 3 years of faithful waiting had not been in vain. The weekend passed in a blur of medical tests, brief periods of consciousness, and long stretches where Daniel simply sat and watched his daughter sleep, real sleep. Doctor. Morrison reduced the ventilator settings gradually, and by Sunday evening, Lily was breathing entirely on her own. The tube was removed Monday morning, and hearing her speak without the mechanical rasp of ventilation was like hearing music after years of silence. "My throat hurts," Lily complained, her voice hoarse but fully hers. "I know, that's from the breathing tube. It'll get better." Daniel offered her ice chips. "Small sips, okay?" She took them carefully, wincing at the cold. "Can I have my stuffed bunny, Mr. Whiskers?" Daniel's heart broke a little. Mr. Whiskers was packed away in storage along with most of Lily's childhood belongings, things he couldn't bear to look at but couldn't bring himself to discard. "I'll bring him tomorrow," he promised. "And some of your books. Would you like that?" "Yes. And can you keep reading The Secret Garden? I want to know what happens to Mary and the Robin." "We're reading that together?" Lily looked confused. "You've been reading it to me. I heard you, lots of times." Daniel and Dr. Morrison exchanged glances. "Lily," Dr. Morrison said gently, "what do you remember about being asleep?" The girl's brow furrowed. "It's fuzzy, like dreams, but not really. Sometimes I heard Daddy's voice, sometimes I heard music, but I couldn't move or talk or wake up. I tried so hard to wake up, but I couldn't." Tears welled in her eyes. "I was stuck, and I couldn't get out." "You're out now," Daniel said, pulling her close. "You made it. You fought your way back." "I heard you telling me to fight. Every day you told me not to give up." Lily buried her face against his chest. "So I didn't." Dr. Morrison stepped out to compose herself, leaving father and daughter alone in their reunion. Over the next week, Lily's progress accelerated. She stayed awake for longer periods, her conversations becoming more coherent, her memory slowly filling in gaps. Physical therapists began working with her, starting with simple exercises, lifting her arms, bending her knees, gripping objects. Everything was exhausting, everything hurt, but Lily approached it with a determination that reminded Daniel achingly of Sarah. "5 more reps," the therapist encouraged. "You're doing great." "I can't," Lily gasped, her arm trembling from the effort of lifting a 1-pound weight. "It's too heavy." "You can. Remember what your dad said? You're the strongest person he knows." Lily gritted her teeth and completed the repetitions, then collapsed back against her pillows, exhausted and triumphant. "That's my girl," Daniel said, squeezing her hand. "When can I go home?" The question hung in the air. Daniel looked to Dr. Morrison, who'd been watching the therapy session. "Let's talk about that," the doctor said. In the hallway, away from Lily's hearing, Dr. Morrison laid out the reality. "She's making excellent progress, but she's months away from being discharged. She'll need intensive inpatient rehabilitation, physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy to strengthen her voice, psychological counseling to process the trauma. We're looking at minimum 3 months here, possibly 6, before she's ready for outpatient care." "Whatever it takes." "Daniel, the costs, I'll figure it out, I always do." Dr. Morrison hesitated. "There's something else. Your employer, Miss Cross. She contacted me." Daniel's stomach dropped. "About what?" "She wanted to know if there were any medical resources that might benefit Lily. Better equipment, specialist consultations, experimental therapies. She was very careful to say this wasn't charity. She called it a medical assistance program through Meridian Financial." Dr. Morrison handed him a folder. "She's offering to cover the full cost of Lily's rehabilitation. Everything not covered by insurance, plus access to the best specialists in the country." Daniel opened the folder. The numbers inside made his head spin. Hundreds of thousands of dollars in proposed treatment, top physicians, cutting-edge therapy techniques. "I can't accept this." "Why not?" "Because it's too much. I can't possibly repay." "She doesn't want repayment. She wants Lily to have the best possible chance at full recovery." Dr. Morrison's voice was firm. "Daniel, I've watched you sacrifice everything for 3 years. Let someone help. Not for you. For Lily." Daniel looked through the glass partition at his daughter, struggling with exercises that should have been simple, fighting to reclaim what trauma had stolen. He thought about his pride, about his independence, about all the reasons he'd refused help for so long. And then he thought about Lily playing piano again, running again, living the childhood she deserved. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay." That evening, he called Evelyn's personal number for the first time. She answered on the second ring. "Daniel, how is she?" She's amazing, tough as nails, determined to walk within a month, even though the therapists say it'll take 3. He paused. Dr. Morrison told me about your offer. It's not an offer, it's already arranged. The program is active as of today. Evelyn, don't argue with me about this. You've given Lily 3 years of your life. Let me give her the resources that might give her a full recovery. Her voice softened. Please. Daniel's eyes burned. Why are you doing this? Because I can. Because it's right. And because sometimes the best use of wealth isn't building empires. It's rebuilding lives. She paused. Also because you turned down every promotion I offered, and I need to do something useful with that unspent salary budget. Despite everything, Daniel laughed. A real laugh, the first in years. Thank you, he said quietly. I mean it. Thank you. You're welcome. Now go be with your daughter. That's where you belong. He hung up and returned to room 314, where Lily was coloring in a book one of the nurses had brought, her movements slow and shaky, but determined. Look, Daddy, she said, holding up a lopsided rainbow. I'm getting better already. You are, little flower. You really are. And for the first time since a phone call 3 years ago had shattered his world, Daniel Reed allowed himself to believe in happy endings again. 3 months passed in a rhythm of small victories and hard-won progress. Lily moved from room 314 to the rehabilitation wing, a brighter space with large windows that overlooked a small garden. The walls were painted cheerful yellow instead of institutional blue, and the room actually felt like a place where healing happened rather than where time stood still. Daniel arranged a leave of absence from Meridian, not permanent resignation, just time. Evelyn had been true to her word, ensuring his position remained secure, his benefits intact, his return guaranteed whenever he was ready. For now, his entire world consisted of therapy sessions, doctor appointments, and the slow, painstaking work of teaching his daughter how to live again. On a Tuesday morning in early March, Daniel watched as Lily took her first steps with a walker. Her legs trembled with effort, her face scrunched in concentration, sweat beading on her forehead despite the cool room temperature. 3 more steps to the chair. Her physical therapist, Marcus, not Chen from work, but a gentle giant of a man who specialized in pediatric rehabilitation, encouraged. You've got this, Lily. I can't, she gasped, her arms shaking as they supported her weight on the walker. You can, Daniel said from where he stood by the chair, arms outstretched. Come on, little flower, come to Daddy. Lily's jaw set in that stubborn way she'd inherited from Sarah. She lifted her right foot, placed it forward with aching slowness, then dragged her left foot to meet it, then again, and again, until she reached the chair and collapsed into it, into Daniel's waiting arms, crying from exhaustion and triumph. I did it, she sobbed. I walked. You did. I'm so proud of you. Daniel held her tight, this girl who'd fought death and won, who was fighting disability with the same fierce determination. You're incredible. It hurt so much. I know, but tomorrow it'll hurt a little less. And the day after that, even less. Until one day, you'll walk without even thinking about it. Lily pulled back to look at him, her eyes, so like Sarah's, searching his face. Do you really believe that? I believe you can do anything you set your mind to. You've already proven that. That afternoon, occupational therapy focused on fine motor skills. Lily practiced buttoning buttons, turning pages, holding a pencil. Everything that had once been automatic now required intense concentration and effort. Her hands cramped. Her fingers wouldn't cooperate, and frustration brought tears more than once. I used to be able to play piano, she said, staring at her trembling hands. Now I can't even hold a fork right. You'll play again, Daniel promised. It just takes time. How much time? The therapists keep saying everyone's different, but they won't tell me when I'll be normal again. Daniel set down the therapy putty she'd been squeezing and took her hands in his. Lily, I need you to listen to me very carefully. You may never be exactly the same as you were before the accident. Your body has been through something most people can't even imagine surviving. But that doesn't mean you can't have a full, wonderful life. It just means it might look different than what we planned. I don't want different. I want my old life back. I know, sweetheart, I know. He squeezed her hands gently, But sometimes we don't get to choose what happens to us. We only get to choose how we respond. And you're responding with so much courage and strength that I'm in awe of you every single day." Lily was quiet for a long moment. "Do you miss Mommy?" The question, asked so simply, hit Daniel like a physical blow. "Every day." "Me too. Except for me, I just saw her. It feels like it was yesterday that we were in the car together, singing along to the radio." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "And then I woke up and she's been gone for 3 years and I missed saying goodbye." Daniel pulled her close, this child who'd lost so much, who was processing grief and trauma and lost time all at once. "She knew you loved her, and she loved you more than anything in this world. She'd be so proud of how hard you're fighting." Did she suffer when she died? Dr. Morrison had told Daniel the truth years ago. Sarah had died on impact. No pain, no fear, just instantaneous absence. It was the only mercy in the entire nightmare. "No, baby. It was instant. She didn't suffer at all." Lily cried then, great heaving sobs for a mother she'd never properly mourned, and Daniel held her through it, wishing he could take away her pain the way he'd once kissed scraped knees and made them better. Recovery wasn't linear. There were good days when Lily exceeded every expectation, and bad days when she regressed, when her body refused to cooperate, when the weight of everything she'd lost crushed her spirit. Daniel learned to celebrate the victories and weather the defeats, to push when she needed pushing and to hold her when she needed holding. On a Friday afternoon in late March, Evelyn visited for the first time since that initial day in the hospital. She arrived during Lily's music therapy session, the therapist playing simple melodies on a keyboard while Lily tried to press the keys in response. "The goal isn't perfection," the therapist explained to Daniel and Evelyn, who sat in chairs along the wall. "It's neural pathway reinforcement. Music activates multiple areas of the brain simultaneously, which can help rewire damaged connections." Lily managed a simple 5-note pattern, her movements jerky and uncoordinated, but undeniably intentional. "That's it," the therapist encouraged. "Beautiful. Let's try it again." After the session ended, Evelyn approached Lily's wheelchair. She still needed it for longer distances, though she was walking short stretches with the walker now. "Hi, Lily. I'm Evelyn. I work with your father." Lily studied her with the solemn assessment of children who'd been forced to grow up too fast. "You're the one who's paying for my therapy." Evelyn blinked, surprised. "Your father told you about that?" "He tells me everything. He says you've been very kind to us." "Well, your father is an exceptional man who deserved support." "He is exceptional," Lily agreed matter-of-factly. "Are you in love with him?" The blunt question made Evelyn's carefully constructed composure falter. Daniel, who'd been reviewing therapy notes with the music therapist, turned sharply. "Lily, that's not appropriate," he started. "It's fine," Evelyn said, crouching to be at eye level with Lily. "That's a fair question. The answer is, it's complicated. I care about your father very much. I respect him more than almost anyone I've ever met. Whether that's love or not, I honestly don't know. But I do know that he loves you more than anything in this world, and that's the only thing that really matters." Lily considered this with serious eyes. "Good. Because he spent 3 years sitting next to me every single day. Someone who does that deserves someone who understands how special that is." "You're very wise for 11. Trauma ages you," Lily said with a small shrug. "That's what my psychologist says." After Evelyn left, promising to visit again soon, Daniel wheeled Lily back to her room. "That was quite an interrogation you gave Miss Cross," he said, a hint of amusement in his voice. "I needed to know if she was good enough for you." "Lily, Daddy, you've been alone for 3 years taking care of me. You deserve to be happy too." She twisted in her wheelchair to look up at him. "If Miss Cross makes you happy, I'm okay with that." Daniel stopped walking and knelt beside the wheelchair. "Right now, watching you recover, seeing you get stronger every day, that makes me happy. That's all I need. But what about later, when I'm better? You're going to be all alone again." "I'll never be alone. I have you." "That's not what I mean." Lily's voice was soft, but insistent. "Mommy would want you to be happy. She wouldn't want you to spend the rest of your life by yourself just because she's gone." Daniel's throat tightened. When did you get so grown up? When I woke up and realized I'd lost 3 years and you'd lost them too, taking care of me. She reached out and took his hand. I love you, Daddy. I want you to have a life, not just existence. He pulled her into a hug, this incredible child who somehow understood things most adults never grasped. We'll figure it out together, okay? One day at a time. Okay. But maybe invite Ms. Cross to dinner sometime. She seems nice. Daniel laughed despite himself. I'll think about it. By mid-April, Lily had progressed enough to transition to outpatient care. She'd be living in a specialized transition facility that offered independent living skills training, along with continued therapy, but she'd have weekend visits home being the apartment Daniel had maintained all these years. The night before her transition, as they sat together in her room, Lily asked the question Daniel had been dreading. Will you go back to work now? Eventually, but not right away. I want to make sure you're settled first. You need to go back, Daddy. You've already been gone 4 months. They need you. They'll manage. But you love your work. I remember, before the accident, you used to tell Mommy and me about all the market analyses you were doing. You'd get so excited about predicting trends and finding patterns. Lily smiled. You should get to be excited about things again. Daniel realized with a start that she was right. He'd been so focused on survival, on being present, that he'd forgotten what it felt like to be engaged with something beyond grief and duty. When did you become the wise one? He asked. I had 3 years to think while I was asleep. Turns out that gives you a lot of perspective. The transition to outpatient care was harder than Daniel expected. Dropping Lily off at the facility, even knowing he'd see her in 2 days, felt like abandonment. But she approached it with her characteristic determination, making friends with other residents, throwing herself into the independence training with the same fierce commitment she brought to physical therapy. On Monday morning in late April, Daniel returned to Meridian Financial for the first time in 4 months. The 42nd floor looked exactly the same. Same desks, same coffee-stained mugs, same ambient hum of ambition. But everything felt different because he was different. Marcus Chen spotted him first. Reed, you're back. How's your daughter? She's doing remarkably well. Thank you for asking. That's great, man. Really great. Marcus hesitated. Listen, I'm sorry if I was ever insensitive before. I didn't know what you were dealing with. You weren't insensitive, you were normal. That's what I wanted. His desk had been maintained in his absence, his files organized by someone who clearly cared. Daniel suspected Evelyn's hand in that. He powered up his monitors, opened his email, 1,847 unread messages, and felt something unexpected. Relief. Purpose. The kind of engagement he'd forgotten existed outside of hospital rooms and therapy sessions. At 10:30 a.m., Evelyn's assistant appeared at his desk. Ms. Cross would like to see you when you have a moment. Daniel made his way to the corner office, memories of their first confrontation playing through his mind. How much had changed since that Friday evening when she'd asked why he kept saying no? Daniel. Evelyn stood as he entered, genuine warmth in her smile. Welcome back. How does it feel? Strange. Good. Overwhelming. He sat in the chair she offered. Thank you for maintaining my position, for everything. You earned it. Your position was never in jeopardy. She sat across from him, in that same configuration that had felt so unsettling months ago, but now felt almost comfortable. How's Lily adjusting to outpatient care? Better than I am, honestly. She's thriving, making progress every day. Daniel's voice filled with pride. The specialists you connected us with have been incredible. They're talking about her potentially returning to partial schooling by fall. That's wonderful. And you? How are you doing? The question, asked with genuine concern, made Daniel pause. No one had asked him that in 4 months. Every conversation had been about Lily, her progress, her needs, her future. No one had thought to ask about the man who'd been carrying the weight. I'm okay, he said slowly. Better than okay, actually. For the first time in 3 years, I'm not just surviving. I'm living again. Good. Evelyn leaned forward slightly. I want to talk about your future here. Not as your boss, but as someone who's come to consider you a friend. What do you want, Daniel? Not what you think you should want. Not what makes sense strategically. What do you actually want from your career? Daniel thought about it, really thought about it, without the fog of exhaustion and grief that had clouded every decision for years. I want flexibility, he said finally. I want to be able to leave at 5:30 when I need to work from home when Lily has appointments. But I also want to be challenged. I want to use my mind for something beyond just surviving. I want to contribute meaningfully. Done. We'll create a senior analyst position with flexible hours. Remote work 3 days a week, in office 2 days. Senior level responsibilities and compensation, but with the schedule flexibility you need. Evelyn smiled. And before you argue about deserving it, you've earned this 10 times over based solely on your work quality. The flexibility is just acknowledgement that life exists outside these walls. I don't know what to say. Say yes, then go get caught up on 4 months of market data so you can blow everyone's minds at next week's strategy meeting. Daniel stood, extended his hand, then pulled back. Actually, would it be inappropriate if I hugged you? Evelyn laughed. I think we're past appropriate at this point. The hug was brief but genuine. Two people who'd started as employer and employee and become something more complicated. Not quite friends, not quite family, but connected by shared understanding of what truly mattered. The next 6 months passed in a blur of progress and adjustment. Lily continued her recovery, moving from walker to cane to walking independently for short distances. Her fine motor skills improved enough that she started piano lessons again. Modified versions at first, simple melodies instead of complex pieces, but music nonetheless. Daniel settled into his new role at Meridian, finding satisfaction in work that challenged his mind while respecting his priorities. He made it to every one of Lily's therapy sessions, every doctor's appointment, every small milestone. The difference was that now he didn't have to sacrifice everything else to do it. One Saturday in October, Daniel brought Lily home for her first full weekend visit since before the accident. The apartment had been modified. Grab bars in the bathroom, a shower chair, her bedroom on the first floor instead of upstairs. But it was home. Lily stood in the doorway, taking it all in. It's smaller than I remember. That happens when you grow up. Things shrink. She walked through slowly, touching familiar objects. The couch where they'd watched movies, the kitchen table where she'd done homework, the bookshelf that still held her favorite stories. In her old room, Daniel had assembled everything carefully. Mr. Whiskers on the bed, her books on the shelves, photos of her and Sarah on the dresser. Lily picked up a photo of her mother taken on Lily's 7th birthday. I'm starting to forget what her voice sounded like. Daniel's heart cracked. I have videos. We can watch them together whenever you want. Can we watch one now? They sat on Lily's bed, Daniel on the edge, Lily propped against pillows, and watched home videos on Daniel's laptop. Sarah's voice filled the room, warm and alive, as she sang Happy Birthday, and laughed at Lily's reaction to her presence and pulled Daniel into frame for a kiss while young Lily made exaggerated gagging sounds. She was so beautiful, Lily whispered, and so happy. She was. We all were. Do you think you could be that happy again? Daniel looked at his daughter, this miracle of resilience and strength. I think I already am. Different happy maybe, but happy nonetheless. What about Miss Cross? What about her? Lily gave him a look that was far too knowing for 11. Daddy, she comes to visit me at the facility. Did you know that? Daniel's surprise must have shown on his face because Lily continued. She comes every other Thursday, brings me books, talks to me about school and therapy and life. She's nice, and she asks about you every single time. She does? She tries to be subtle about it, but she's not very good at subtle. Lily smiled. I like her. She's smart and strong, and she doesn't treat me like I'm broken. You're not broken. I know, but a lot of people act like I am. Ms. Cross doesn't. She treats me like a person who's been through something hard but is handling it well. Lily set down the photo of Sarah. Mommy would like her too, I think. Probably, Daniel admitted. Your mom always appreciated people who spoke their minds. So ask her out, to dinner or coffee or whatever adults do when they like each other. It's complicated, Lily. Why? Because of Mommy? Because you think it's too soon? Lily's voice was gentle but firm. Daddy, it's been almost 4 years, And you didn't spend those years living. You spent them waiting for me to wake up. Don't you think you've waited long enough? Daniel pulled her into a hug, this wise, wonderful child who somehow understood things he was still figuring out. When did you get so smart? I had a good teacher. That Monday, Daniel asked Evelyn to lunch. Not at the corporate cafeteria, not at an expensive restaurant. At a small cafe near the office where the food was good and the atmosphere quiet. She said yes immediately, with a smile that suggested she'd been waiting for him to ask. They talked for 2 hours about everything and nothing, work and family and books, and the strange journey they'd both been on. Evelyn told him about her own loneliness, about building an empire, and realizing too late that empires were cold places to live. Daniel told her about learning to hope again, about the terror and joy of watching Lily reclaim her life piece by piece. I'm not good at this, Evelyn admitted over coffee. Relationships, vulnerability, letting people in. I've spent 20 years building walls. I spent 3 years in a waiting room, emotionally, Daniel said. I'm not sure I'm good at it either, but Lily seems to think we should try. Your daughter is remarkably wise. She is, takes after her mother. Daniel paused. I need you to understand something, Evelyn. Lily comes first, always. If there's an appointment, a setback, an emergency, I know, and I wouldn't want it any other way. Evelyn reached across the table, taking his hand. I don't need to be first, Daniel. I just need to be included. I think I can manage that. Their relationship developed slowly, carefully, with the caution of two people who'd both been hurt by life in different ways. Evelyn became a regular presence at weekend dinners, at Lily's physical therapy sessions she asked to attend, at the small moments that made up a rebuilding life. Lily adored her, declaring after their third dinner together that Ms. Cross was exactly what Daddy needed, someone who wouldn't let him be too serious all the time. On a Sunday evening in December, almost a year after Lily had first woken up, Daniel and Evelyn stood in the facility's common room watching Lily perform in a small recital. Her fingers still struggled with complex pieces. Her playing wasn't what it had been before the accident, but she played with feeling and determination, and when she finished a simplified version of Clair de Lune, the room erupted in applause. Lily stood shakily. She still used a cane for stability, and bowed with the same serious dignity she'd shown at recitals years ago. Her eyes found Daniel's in the crowd, and the smile she gave him was pure joy. She's remarkable, Evelyn whispered. She is, Daniel agreed, his voice thick with emotion. After the recital, as they were preparing to leave, Lily pulled Evelyn aside. Can I ask you something? Of course. Are you staying? With us, I mean. Not just visiting, but really staying? Evelyn knelt to be at eye level, taking Lily's free hand. If your father and you will have me, yes, I'd like that very much. Good. Because Daddy's been happy since you started coming around. Really happy, not just pretend happy. Lily squeezed her hand. And I think maybe you've been happier too. I have been. You and your father, you've taught me what actually matters. What's worth building a life around. We can be pretty great when we try, Lily said with a small smile. That night, after they dropped Lily back at the facility and were sitting in Daniel's car in the parking lot, Evelyn turned to him. She asked if I was staying. What did you tell her? That I'd like to, if you would. Evelyn's voice held an uncertainty that was rare for her. I know it's complicated. I know there are no guarantees, but I'd like to try, Daniel, to be part of this, of your life, of Lily's recovery, of whatever comes next. Daniel thought about the past year, about Lily's miraculous recovery, about rediscovering purpose in his work, about slowly learning to live instead of just survive. He thought about Sarah, who'd always told him that love wasn't about replacing what was lost, but about making room for what was new. I'd like that too, he said quietly, but I need you to understand, this isn't going to be conventional. Lily's recovery is ongoing. There will be setbacks, appointments, hard days, and she'll always be my priority. I know, and I love you anyway, both of you. It was the first time she'd said it out loud, and the words hung in the air between them, beautiful, terrifying, true. I love you too, Daniel said. I didn't think I could feel this way again, but I do. They sat in the parking lot for another hour, talking about the future, about moving in together eventually, about Lily's continued recovery, about building a life that honored the past while embracing what was possible. Spring came early that year, bringing with it a sense of renewal that felt almost metaphorical. Lily continued her progress, transitioning to a regular school for part-time attendance. She still had therapy 3 times a week, still used her cane on bad days, still struggled with things that had once been effortless. But she also made friends, joined the school's modified music program, and started talking about maybe, someday, performing in a full recital again. Daniel and Evelyn made their relationship official, to the absolute delight of Marcus Chen, who claimed he'd called it months ago, despite having no idea any of this was happening. Evelyn reduced her hours at Meridian, delegating more to her executive team, discovering that the company ran just fine without her micromanagement and that she preferred having a life outside the office. On a Saturday in late April, exactly 18 months after Lily had first opened her eyes, they held a small celebration at Daniel's apartment, now their apartment, with Evelyn's things mixed in among the familiar furniture. It wasn't an anniversary of anything official, just a marking of time, a recognition of how far they'd all come. Lily sat at the upright piano Daniel had bought, not the grand piano she'd had before, but a good instrument that fit the space, and played for their small gathering. Dr. Morrison was there, and Nurse Patterson, and George from the security desk, and Marcus the physical therapist, and a handful of others who'd been part of Lily's journey. She played a piece she'd written herself, simple but heartfelt, her fingers more confident than they'd been 6 months ago, her face serene with concentration. When she finished, the small group applauded, and Lily stood, without her cane, Daniel noticed, and gave a little bow. "I want to say something," she announced, her voice clear and strong. "To everyone here, you've all been part of bringing me back. Dr. Morrison and Nurse Patterson, who took care of me when I couldn't take care of myself. Marcus, who taught me to walk again. George, who always had a kind word for my dad during the hard years." She paused, looking at Daniel and Evelyn. "And my dad, who never gave up on me, not even when everyone said there was no hope. And Ms. Cross, Evelyn, who taught him that it's okay to live again, not just exist." Daniel felt Evelyn's hand find his, their fingers intertwining. "I'm not the same as I was before the accident," Lily continued. "I'll probably never be exactly that person again, but I think maybe I'm okay with that. Because the person I am now knows what it's like to fight for every small thing, to appreciate every step, every note of music, every day of being awake and alive." She smiled, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "So thank you, all of you, for helping me become who I am now." The room erupted in applause and more than a few tears. Daniel crossed to his daughter and pulled her into a hug, this incredible young woman who'd taught him more about courage and resilience than he'd ever taught her about anything. "I'm so proud of you, little flower," he whispered. "I'm proud of us," she whispered back. "All of us." That evening, after the guests had left and Lily had gone to bed, she was staying at the apartment more frequently now, working toward full-time home living. Daniel and Evelyn sat on the couch, exhausted and content. "Can I tell you something?" Evelyn said. "A year and a half ago, I thought I had everything figured out. Success, power, control. I thought those were the things that mattered." She turned to look at him. "You and Lily taught me that I was wrong, that the only thing that really matters is showing up, being present, loving people enough to put them first." "You've shown up," Daniel said. "Every day, in every way that matters. Lily adores you. I adore you. I never thought I'd be someone's partner, someone's—" She paused. "Someone's family. But that's what this feels like I found the family I didn't know I was missing." "You have. We're yours, if you want us. I want you, both of you, for as long as you'll have me." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that comes when two people understand each other beyond words. Outside, the city hummed its eternal song. Inside, a small family, rebuilt from tragedy, strengthened by adversity, bound by love that had learned the difference between possession and devotion, settled into the peace of simply being together. In her room, Lily lay awake for a few minutes, listening to the soft murmur of conversation from the living room. She thought about her mother, whose voice she was starting to forget, but whose love she'd never question. She thought about the 3 years she'd lost and the life she was building from the pieces that remained. And she thought about the woman in the other room who'd learned to love her father, not despite his devotion to his daughter, but because of it. Who'd proven that love didn't always mean being first. Sometimes it meant stepping back and making space for what mattered most. Lily smiled in the darkness and closed her eyes, drifting toward sleep with the security of knowing that when she woke up, tomorrow and all the tomorrows after, her father would be there. And now so would Evelyn, not replacing what was lost, just adding something new to what remained. The deepest love, Lily had learned, wasn't about holding on tight or letting go. It was about knowing when to do each and having the wisdom to recognize the difference. Her father had held on when everyone else said to let go, and she'd come back. And Evelyn had stepped back when love demanded it, proving that the strongest devotion sometimes means accepting second place. Together, they'd all learned the same lesson, that love measured in presence, in showing up, in being there even when there was no guarantee of return. That was the only love that mattered. That was the only love that lasted. And as sleep claimed her, Lily Reed, 11 years old and impossibly wise, understood something most people spent lifetimes learning, that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone isn't your need to be needed. It's your understanding of what they need most, and the grace to let them have it.